Thanks so much. Great to be here. Thanks so much. Appreciate Miller Electric hosting us here today. Great to be back in Jacksonville. We're able to sign some pretty important legislation into law here momentarily. I am joined here today by the president of the Florida Sheriff's Association, Sheriff Al Nienhuis from Hernando County. Of course, we have the CEO of Miller Electric who's hosting us, Henry Brown. I want to thank him for doing that. We have Senator Clay Yarborough with us here today. And we have Representatives Michael, Black, and Jacques. So thank you all for being, and thanks for your great work on all of this. And then we're also going to be joined by Nikki Jones and her daughters Harley and Raven, who you will hear from a little bit later. So thank you for coming, Nikki. I don't think anybody could have any other view but that we've got massive problems at our southern border with Mexico. And this is something that is the responsibility of Joe Biden. This is a responsibility that he has defaulted on really from day one of his presidency. And he is charged with ensuring the safety and security of this country. He's charged with ensuring that the laws are faithfully executed, and he has refused to meet that obligation. And in Florida, we recognize this from day one, and we've acted really since he took office to combat the negative effects of his border policy. It is causing huge problems, and it's going to get a lot worse this week with the expiration of Title 42. You're going to end up having 10,000, 15,000 a day potentially coming over. Just last fiscal year, they had almost 2.4 million encounters with illegal aliens. That's the highest ever in our history, even beating Biden's previous record of 1.96 million. And that's just the encounters. There's other people coming in who don't get encountered, and so the numbers are a lot higher than that. But if you look at that almost 2.4 million, that's more than the combined populations of the cities of Jacksonville, Miami, Orlando, and Tampa. The Biden administration recently claimed that when it comes to illegal immigration, quote, "You've seen it come down by more than 90%. That is a lie. That is something that they're trying to feed you and hope their buddies in corporate media will run with, but that is factually untrue and demonstrably untrue. So you have huge problems with Title 42 expiring. This is Biden's estimates are they think it could be up to 13,000 illegal aliens crossing the border every single day. And at that pace, on an annual basis, that would be 4.5 million, and that's roughly the size of Miami-Dade and Broward counties combined, Florida's two most populous counties. And so Title 42 is ending. They had tried to get rid of it earlier. It's tied to COVID. So they actually wanted COVID restrictions for you, but they wanted to remove Title 42 for illegal aliens. And so we in Florida, with the Attorney General Ashley Moody, we sued the Biden administration to keep Title 42 in place, and we were able to win that case, and actually would have been a lot worse over the last year or so had we not done that. Now that the COVID emergency is ending, quote unquote, Title 42 is going to expire, and so you are going to see a massive surge of illegal aliens. You have a duty to ensure that these borders are secure. This is a huge disaster on our hands, and it does not comport with the duties of his office to just allow this to happen. Alexander Hamilton wrote in the Federalist Papers that energy in the executive is the leading characteristic of good government. Where is this president's energy? Where's his vigor? Where's his commitment to the cause? He's just sitting around doing nothing of importance or nothing of note while the American people suffer. And what is the problem with this? Well, first of all, it's just chaos. We're supposed to be the world's leading superpower, and yet we can't even maintain control of our own southern border. the Mexican drug cartels have more to say about what goes on the southern border than our own U.S. government does. And so you have a situation where there is just no rule of law. It's been totally tossed out the window, and that is not what we want in a constitutional republic. You also have the fact that the sheer number of people coming, these border towns, they get overwhelmed with the number of people, but then when they settle them in the interior of our country, you have all kinds of burdens placed on taxpayers, on medical, on education, on criminal justice. All of these different things impact communities in a very, very big way. And you want to know how it's a burden? All you have to do is look back when we helped send 50 illegal aliens to Martha's Vineyard, one of the most wealthy enclaves in this country. They removed them off that island the next day because they said they couldn't accommodate 50. Well, look at some of these other places. They're getting thousands of people coming illegally, and yet they're just supposed to grin and bear it. Of course, you do have criminal aliens that are coming across the border, and people say, Florida, you're not on the border, what do you care? Well, October 21, you had an illegal alien stab a man to death right here in Jacksonville. March of last year, illegal alien murdered a couple who were participating in Bike Week in Daytona. And in September, we had an illegal alien drive a front loader at a construction site that killed a sheriff's deputy in Tampa Bay. And so you've seen this happen just in Florida. You're seeing it happen all over the country. You also have massive amounts of fentanyl that are pouring into our country. Tens of thousands of deaths because of fentanyl every single year, and it's all coming across the border. It's all being run by the drug cartels, and this border situation is saying you're going to be able to move as much fentanyl across the border as you need to. We had just last year over 100,000 overdose deaths, and I think you're likely to see that continue with the amount of product that's being moved in. So this is a huge, huge dereliction of duty to ignore the security and the borders of your own country. But as I mentioned, we saw this from the very beginning of the Biden administration, and we've worked very hard to do, look, states are limited in terms of what they do. I think a good reform federally would be deputize states to enforce immigration law. Texas should be able to send them back to Mexico or back to these other countries. You shouldn't have to turn them over to Border Patrol and then Biden orders them released back into our own country. Of course more people are going to come if that's the case. So I wish states would be deputized to do more, but as it is, we're doing the limit of what states can do. We have sent, in 2021, when this thing was really taken off, we sent Florida law enforcement to Texas, to the border, to help with interdictions. And those guys did a good job. I think the problem is people come, they get interdicted, then you turn them over to Border Patrol, and Border Patrol just releases them into our country anyways. And so you're thinking to yourself, why is that a great use of our resources? If it'd be one thing if you were repelling it from happening, then I think that'd be great. I'd be happy to do it. So that was something that some of them were able to be charged with crimes, which was great, but many of them were not because they basically came illegally. They didn't necessarily have drugs on them, so they get released into our country, and that's not good policy. We also issued an executive order that prohibited agencies in the state of Florida from providing any support for the resettlement of illegals in Florida, and that prohibited licensing facilities that housed illegal alien minors. And this is a cottage industry. These organizations make a lot of money off this. You want your borders enforced, but a lot of them don't because they make more money having the open border. We also signed legislation that prohibited government contracts with any private entity that is assisting the Biden administration in resettling illegal aliens into the state of Florida. And then we signed legislation requiring all public employers, contractors, subcontractors attempting to enter contracts with government employers to do mandatory e-verify to verify that the workers are legally employed. We also sued the Biden administration for his catch and release policy, and we won in federal court in the Panhandle, and we were glad that that happened. We also last year signed legislation cracking down on opioid dealers and traffickers, subjecting people who distribute certain controlled substances that lead to somebody's death to a potential conviction for first-degree felony murder, and increasing the mandatory minimum sentence for trafficking fentanyl to up to 20 years. And at the end of the day, when you're dealing with fentanyl, there's a whole host of ways you have to approach it. We believe in working on the demand side. The First Lady has put in a lot of programs in schools to try to let students know, hey, messing around with drugs in this day and age, you may think it's something, but if they put fentanyl in that, you could die. And that's just the reality of what we're seeing. And so you've got to fight it from the demand side. You've got to let people know that doing fentanyl is almost like playing Russian roulette with your life. It's not worth doing. You also have to work on the treatment side. We have a coordinated opioid recovery network we call the CORD network. And what that does, if somebody overdoses and then they go to the hospital and then they're revived, to just put them back on the street, if they're addicted, they are likely to have relapse. And so with CORE, you have interventions, you get them on appropriate medication, or you get them appropriate medical attention, and the goal is to get them to live productive lives alongside this addiction. And of the people that went into the program, the relapse rate has been like 5%. So that's something that's really, really good. So you got to do all these things, but you do have to fight the supply, and you have to make it so that if you're bringing this stuff in, we're going to hold you accountable. Last week I signed a bill that is enhanced penalties for fentanyl dealers who market it to minors by putting it in candy and things of that nature. We're throwing the book at them if they're going after our children, but it's very important that we understand that that is something that makes a big, big difference. We also formed a strike force of state and local law enforcement to interdict human smuggling and human trafficking and to seize illegal drugs and weapons being transported into the state. So a lot of this is in the Panhandle because people are coming on I-10, but it's really happened all over the state in various ways. The strike force has resulted in nearly 300 felony charges, more than 40 human smuggling charges, and nearly 130 drug charges. And part of that is people do that, you need to hold them accountable, but it also sends a signal to other people. They're thinking about coming from the border, smuggling people somewhere. Florida is not a good place for you to do that, okay, because you're going to end up facing pushback. If you want to go somewhere where they are a sanctuary state, then do California or do Illinois or something, but don't do here because we're going to fight back. We also petitioned the Florida Supreme Court to impanel a statewide grand jury to examine international human smuggling networks that bring illegal aliens to the southern border and ultimately into the United States, including into Florida. And it has released some of its initial findings. So these grand juries, they can issue reports as they go. And if you read the report that they most recently did, I mean, these minors are basically victims of trafficking. Many of them have been sexually abused. Some of them are mistreated in other ways. And this is all happening with the imprimatur of your federal government. And I think it's a disgrace. We also secured another $12 million. Well, we initially secured $12 million for the illegal alien transport program. So we did that, for example, with Martha's Vineyard. We also got more money in this year's budget to be able to help with that problem. It's not just U.S.-Mexico border, though. If you look, you have boats trying to come into Florida from places like Haiti. And so we started to see a spike in this. And the Coast Guard does a good job, but they don't have enough assets. Biden will not send more assets. So you started to see boats getting through. And then at one point, the feds dumped like 350 illegal aliens in the Florida Keys. So we said that that's unacceptable. So we declared a state of emergency. And then we surged Florida state maritime resources to work alongside the Coast Guard, fill in the gaps. And what we've been able to do is, since August, we've had more than 12,000 illegal migrants attempting to come to Florida shores. They've been interdicted and repatriated to Haiti or Cuba or wherever they were coming from. We've also removed 393 vessels from Florida shores and waterways that have been used by illegal migrants to enter the state. And then back in February, and so that is a huge success right there, because, I mean, like, just imagine if we had left it to the feds and they don't have enough resources, you'd probably have hundreds more boats that would end up getting to Florida shores. So we're proud of really leaning in on all these issues. We think it's very important. Obviously, if we had a different administration, be a lot easier, because, you know, you'd be able to actually deal with the problem at its source. As it is, we've got to use the tools we have. So in February, we were in Jacksonville, and we proposed strong legislation to curb illegal immigration, both deterring illegal immigrants from coming to Florida, but also holding people accountable within Florida who were involved in illegal immigration. And so we made that promise. We said that we were going to go big, and today we deliver on that promise by signing Senate Bill 1718. And even the New York Times admitted this is the strongest legislation against illegal immigration anywhere in the country. What the bill does is a number of different things. This makes Florida the largest state in the country to do full E-Verify for employment. And that's important because if people are going to come if they get benefits, and so what you want to do is say there's not benefits for coming illegally. You're either here as a native or you come legally, and those are two fine things, but to come across the border and end up getting benefits in Florida, you know, does not make sense. So we already have, it's already against the law for someone to be employed if they're here illegally, but the E-Verify provides a way to make sure that that's enforceable. So we think that that's something that's going to make a big difference. Senate Bill 1718 also enhances human smuggling penalties in Florida and subjects offenders to prosecution under the Florida RICO Act, which was a recommendation from the statewide grand jury that we had. And so if you're knowingly transporting illegal aliens into Florida, you can face up to 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine per offense. If you're caught transporting 5 or more illegal aliens, or an unaccompanied illegal alien minor, or you have a prior conviction for human smuggling, you can get a $10,000 fine and up to 15 years in prison. Now, at the end of the day, you wouldn't have the illegal immigration problem if you didn't have a lot of people that were facilitating this in our country. And so in Florida, that's not a good bet for you to do that here, and this bill shows that that's the case. The bill also prohibits county governments and NGOs from using tax dollars to provide IDs for illegal aliens. It invalidates out-of-state licenses issued to illegal aliens, and it makes it a felony for illegal aliens to use a fake ID to gain employment. We don't have in Florida, and we shouldn't have, driver's licenses for illegal aliens. A lot of people across the country who want open borders, they want driver's licenses, and you have it I think in California and a number of these other states. We've never done that, but what happens is you have some of these local governments, they're actually working with private groups to generate ID cards to be able to be used as if that makes you legal to be here. So we're not going to recognize that. We're also not going to recognize a driver's license from California that was issued to somebody here illegally, or these other states. And so we're making sure that in Florida we're doing it legal and we're doing it right. The bill, and part of, I think, the issue, you know, with the, because you're going to hear from an Angel wife, you're going to hear from Rep. Michael, Angel Mom, and that's really important. When you have somebody here illegally committing criminal offenses against our own people, those crimes would not have been committed if they just weren't brought in illegally. And so that's a huge thing, and it's something that we spend a lot of time on, and that's important. It's also the case that even somebody not committing crimes, it's imposing huge costs on our community. And one of the ways it imposes huge costs is medical costs. Because you show up to an emergency room, they treat you. Doesn't matter if you're legal or illegal. Of course, if most of the people here illegally, or probably all of them, they're not paying for any of the services they're getting. You're paying for it as taxpayers. And so we started in 2021 collecting with our state agencies data on healthcare costs for illegal aliens, and we found that this is a lot of money. During the 2021-22 fiscal year, healthcare costs for illegal aliens in Florida was nearly $340 million, and taxpayers were on the hook for 2/3 of that cost. So the Biden administration is trying to increase those costs. They want to actually use Medicaid to cover illegal aliens, which we don't support and won't do in Florida, but that's their vision in terms of what they want to do. But what the bill does is it says you have to collect data at the hospital level about care that's being given to people here illegally, because we were able to identify some. We think that there's a lot more, and the public deserves an honest accounting of how much this is costing us in terms of services, and health care is probably number one. And then, as I mentioned, we also secured an additional $12 million for the illegal alien transport program to sanctuary jurisdictions. A lot of these sanctuary jurisdictions, they say they want open borders, they say that nobody's illegal, they get mad when people want to enforce the border, and yet when these people, the illegal aliens, are brought to their jurisdictions, they scream bloody murder. You saw it in Martha's Vineyard, you see it in New York City, you see it in these other places, and the reality is it's shining a light on how absurd the federal government's policies are. We have to stop this nonsense. This is not good for our country. And when even sanctuary jurisdictions are saying they can't bear the burden of it, you know this is no way to run a government. This is no way to have a country based on the rule of law. This is no way to keep your people safe. So today, we are acting with the strongest measures yet. We're proud of the legislature for stepping up and for getting this done, but we're bracing for some turbulent times ahead. And I think when you have a president who's turned a blind eye to what's gone on the border, I don't think he's even visited the border the whole time he's been in office. When you have that, you're likely to see it get a lot worse. So we're protecting Floridians with the full extent of our powers to do that. But it's sad. It's sad to see what's happened. It's sad to see these images of the lawlessness. It's sad to hear the stories of the people that have been victimized by people coming across the border. It's sad to see the mothers who've lost children as a result of fentanyl overdose. This has taken a big toll on our country, and Florida's fighting back. Okay, we're going to hear from some of our speakers. So Rep. Michael, why don't you come up?
Well, hello, everyone. Hello. Thank you, Governor DeSantis. This bill that we're signing today, we are making history. This is something that has never been done in our nation. And it's because we have a governor that's bold enough, that's courageous enough, and that cares enough to say that your family matters, you matter, the safety of our communities matter, and you can't get any better than that. And I just thank you, Governor, for standing up. When other governors have just bowed to the Biden administration and cowered to them, our governor said no. In this state, he has control. He's running this state, and that this will not continue on. I want to thank my husband, Bobby. Where are you? Right there. Okay. I want to thank you because when we were impacted by losing our son, and I'll tell this story in just a moment, he really did, as guys do, he pushed his grief aside to hold us together. And our daughter is over there with our grandson that had to leave because you all would have had a whole different type of entertainment from a 5-year-old. And I thank them for just sticking with me and standing behind me and standing beside me and enduring so much grief and so much pain. And our oldest son is working. And I also want to thank Senator Ngolia, who ran this bill on the Senate side. I ran it on the House side. He really fought for this bill to stay intact, because I'll explain in just a minute exactly how this really does help us enforce the laws. I want to thank my prime co-sponsor, Senator, maybe that's a future thing, I don't know. Representative Jacques, if you could just stand up and you guys, just wave to them. I brought him on board somewhere at the beginning of the bill. We talked beforehand, and I said, I think they're going to go in a direction that is going to turn this thing into legal ways, so I wanted you to come on board, and he did it. And Jacques represents not only the strength of what it means to be an American, but he is a legal immigrant, and his family did it the right way. They did it the way that our laws say. So I thank you for your support, and thank you for helping me with this bill. I want to thank Representative Byrd. I'm not sure where you are. Yes. If you all don't know, not Representative, you're Secretary now. I'm trying to keep up. Bear with me. If you all don't know, Secretary Byrd was then Representative, and he started with the immigration package as far as the E-Verify. And you fought hard, and you stood on that floor, and you brought across for us the ban on sanctuary cities. And I came and spoke in the committees for you all that don't know. And I remember you standing until 2 o'clock in the morning fighting. Thank you. Thank you. And we're able to pick this up. Again, Governor, thank you. I thank my leadership in the House for standing behind me. Today we are making history because we are saying that Florida is the beacon of light, it's the beacon of hope, strength, direction, and we're the evidence that it can be done, and we're showing this is how you do it. Today I'm grateful that we are a law and order state, and we're taking a stand that American citizens shouldn't have to compete against employers that put their profit margins over the rights of Americans to protect our families. You see, our family was impacted, and the reason why, for you all that haven't heard my story, is our 21-year-old son, Brandon Randolph Michael, on August 15th, 2007, he was on his way to go and cash his paycheck right here in Jacksonville, right off of St. John's Bluff, and he was hit and killed by a twice deported illegal. That means he was deported twice and defied our laws and came back. Our family was devastated. We still are not. We're never going to be whole. We have not gotten over it. You never get over it. For a family, it is the worst nightmare. For a mother, I mean, we went through so much, and we still are going through a lot. But you see, the illegal that hit Brandon, the reason why we need mandatory verify is he was working somewhere. He was going to buy paint on that horrible day. And he didn't know. The reason why not giving them driver's licenses is so critical to this and to us is that he didn't know that he could make a U-turn at that location, at the intersection where he plowed into our child. He didn't know our laws, couldn't understand our signs. But yet other states give them driver's licenses. But in the state of Florida, we're saying no, that's not going to happen. The reason why this bill is so critical is because every step of the way there was preventive things that could have happened that was totally ignored. When I asked who is the employer that was hiring him illegally because he was sending his paycheck back to his country, I was told as a mama I didn't have the right to know that. Because you're right that I was going to go after them. You are absolutely right I was going to go after them. We cannot ignore the needs of our seniors. It really bothers me when we're able to give resources to people who are not here legally, when we have a legal process, but then we have senior citizens that cannot afford to pay their bills. They have to decide, are they going to be able to eat? It bothers me that we have veterans like my husband, 20 years in the military, and they're sleeping on the street, but we have illegals in hotels. That bothers me. But we're saying in the state of Florida that, once again, we are leading the way that this can stop, this can be prevented, and this is how you do it. We cannot ignore the fact that the administration in Washington, D.C. has turned a deaf ear. We're not doing that because they have done that. We've decided today, our governor will be signing it, that your lives matter, your family lives matter, your safety matter. The impact of our resources, it should go to Americans. Today we're standing with our governor to say we will defend our families, we'll protect our children, We'll protect our community. Our resources belong to us and your safety. Governor, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for listening to me about my family and reaching out to us. You know, some people think that this just started, but this is why I ran, all the way back from the beginning. We went and we've been working together, and he embraced us, and he listened to what I had to say. And I saw such a strong governor. I saw the compassion in your eyes. And I saw that look of a father. And I'll never forget that. And that's something that no one could ever tell me was not real. I know that it was. And you didn't just promise us, but you made good on those promises. You didn't just listen, but you took action. And we're blessed because of that. I think you all need to just give him a round of applause. You trusted me as a freshman. When I was running for office, you trusted me, and you trusted me as a freshman to take on such a heavy and a big bill, and I thank you for that, because I wasn't going to stop. I don't know, you know, some people with mamas, we just don't stop. You are not going to be able to stop us. You are not going to be able to discourage us. You're not going to be able to scare us. We're going to keep it rolling, and we're going to get it across the finish line. Most of all, I thank you for protecting our families, because we know, as you have spoken, that danger is coming. We're having an invasion, whether people want to admit it or not. And I'm grateful, I'm sure you all are, to live in a state that is led by the greatest governor. I'm grateful to live in a state that listens to his people. And I'm grateful to have been given this bill and to see it all the way through with all of their help, all of the leadership, my family, the governor, Senator Ngolia, Representative Byrd. We got it across that finish line. Thank you. Thank you to my staff, Destiny. She's my DA. They were up late. And Logan, he's my LA, and they were working hard, because I'm not easy to work with when it comes to getting, I want things when I want them, because we got to get it done. We got a job to do. So God bless you all. God bless you, Governor. God bless your family. God bless each one of you all. God bless our nation, and God bless the free state of Florida. Thank you.
All right. Sheriff?
Good morning. I'm Hernando County Sheriff Alan Nienhuis. I also happen to be this year's president of the Florida Sheriff's Association. And, you know, I first want to go on record as saying thank you, Governor. He's not just courageous, but does he have a tremendous grasp of minute details over such a broad spectrum? I see people nodding their heads. I thank you for taking the time to really educate yourself on these issues, Governor. It amazes me every time. I want to thank Senate President Pasadomo, Speaker Paul Renner, Senator Blaise Ngolia. We heard about that. He happens to be my senator. Representative Michael, thank you for taking tragedy and turning it into something good. Certainly appreciate that. And we thank all of our leadership for their forward thinking and their support of law enforcement. Now, this legislation is safeguarding our residents, our families, and those visitors that come to our great state. And we don't have to look far. You've already heard a little bit about this, or look long, to find criminals who are here illegally committing serious crimes, including murder. Here in Jacksonville, a 60-year sentence was just within the last few days handed out to a murderer who was here in the country illegally. The criminal was initially apprehended by Border Patrol, and I've been to the border, and they are overwhelmed in Texas. And after crossing the border, he claimed to be a juvenile and even provided a false name to law enforcement. Go figure. Like so many others that cross our southern border, he was served a notice to appear and was released into the interior of the United States. Under the backwards border policy of this current administration under President Biden, an illegal alien, I believe personally, is flawed. And in this particular one, this illegal alien was flown into Jacksonville in the dead of night without any notice to local law enforcement, where he was released without any supervision whatsoever. It was only after beating and stabbing to death a local resident that this dangerous criminal was properly dealt with. Pinellas County, as you also heard, kind of in my area of the state, also lost a deputy. Heart-wrenching story at the hands of someone here illegally back in September. A 19-year veteran of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff's Deputy Mike Hartwick, was struck and killed last year by an illegal alien who was employed by a construction company out of Tampa. After murdering Deputy Hartwick, he tried to cover up his tracks and cover up the murder and lie to law enforcement about his identity. This murderer came across the southern border without incident and made his way to Tampa, where he was hired along with several other immigrants. Florida, as you heard the governor say, is absolutely not a sanctuary state, and illegal immigrants are not authorized to work here. In addition to those who commit violent crimes, illegal immigration has also been adding to our fight in law enforcement against human trafficking as well as drug trafficking. And these common sense policies that are in these bills that are going to be signed today, and the added technology, which I'll talk about very briefly, will help law enforcement do our job. Rapid DNA. Florida's going to be on the cutting edge of this technology. This will allow us to hold criminals accountable and solve crimes quickly. Currently, it takes somewhere between 30 to 90 days to have DNA of someone arrested, have it tested, and manually tested, and then put into the computer to compare the results to unsolved crimes across the entire country. Now, this includes people who are arrested for serious crimes that are here illegally and booked into our county jails. During our Hernando County legislative session back in January, I happened to mention to Senator Angolia that FDLE Commissioner Glass and I were talking about rapid DNA. And as we discussed how it would take a little bit of workload off of FDLE and at the same time speed up the testing process, Commissioner Glass and I then talked about testing illegal aliens, even those that are arrested for minor crimes, which is not currently happening. Prior to this, law enforcement, we only tested people who were arrested for serious crimes, mainly felonies. Therefore, if we arrested somebody, for example, for shoplifting or DUI and found out that they were here illegally, they would not heretofore be tested. Now, regardless of the crime, if they're here illegally and they get arrested, they will be tested, and we should actually know within about 90 minutes if their DNA matches an unsolved crime, a serious unsolved crime, anywhere in the United States. And we will know it before they are released back into society. Also, once they're tested, they'll be in the system. If they go commit a crime in another week or two, a serious crime, and they leave DNA, their DNA will be in the system. So again, through leadership's support of law enforcement and technology, this pilot program is going to allow us to know if an arrested person is a suspect in a serious unsolved crime within about an hour or two, and again, before he or she is released on a bail or through any other method. And it's even if that person is here illegally and is arrested for a relatively minor crime. Our Florida legislators knew that waiting on the sidelines, and as well as our governor knew waiting on the sidelines was absolutely not an option, as our heroes are fighting this trafficking epidemic. Our legislators came through with the tools needed for us to continue our 50-plus year low in crime. Thank you, each and every one of you, not just our legislators and our governor, but thank everybody for your support of law enforcement. We never take it for granted. Thank you all very much.
Okay, Nikki Jones.
Hi, my name's Nikki, and I'm here to tell my story because I feel like it's important everyone knows the aftermath of illegal alien crimes. My husband was killed on November 2nd, 2019 by an illegal alien drinking and driving. Unfortunately, we weren't able to sentence him. Sorry.
It's okay.
Let me. The illegal alien had multiple traffic violations, including DUIs, and kept getting let out on U.S. soil prior to him killing my husband. He had 4 violations and never got deported. He even attended DUI school as an illegal alien in the state of Florida. The night he killed my husband, he had learned how to manipulate the system and refused a breathalyzer test and field sobriety test. Despite evidence of alcohol on the scene, there was lack of evidence for the court system, which resulted in a lesser charge. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 4 years in jail with plans of deportation. Currently, he is at an ICE detention facility after serving only 3 years. The aftermath is devastating beyond words. Our children, I have 2 girls. One was only 6 months and the only was only 2 years old the time he was killed. They will never know their father or know how much he loved him. They will never experience father-daughter dances or go fishing with him, which my husband loved to do and always talked about teaching the kids how to fish when they got older. Every day I wake up and I pray to God that I will be able to keep my home for my kids and I. We had just bought our home. My husband just retired from the military. And we settled in Plant City, Florida. And so now I was left with 2 kids at the age of 6 months and 2 years old, a mortgage, childcare, and everything else, the rest of the bills. Nobody holds responsibility for illegal aliens in the United States. So when an American or legal family is destroyed, there are no funds to stabilize that family. No businesses are held accountable. No sponsors are held responsible. No relief programs are available. Nothing. I've tried, I've called for the past 4 years, multiple resources, and I always get turned down. My husband served this country for 20 years to just end up killed by an illegal alien on his own soil. He didn't deserve this. Absolutely he didn't. I didn't deserve this, and most of all, our children did not deserve this. We did everything right in life. We abided by laws, we were good citizens, and we're destroyed. And now every day I have to wake up, are me and my girls gonna have our home? I am in complete support of this immigration bill because it is a start to protecting our families and children. Once we are able to protect our families and children, we can stabilize the victims in an immediate household such as mine. My husband was our protector, our provider, and rebuild our state. Florida can be America's example. And thank you, Governor DeSantis and Cayenne, or Representative Michael, for taking this important first step. Thank you.
Oh, my great job. You did really good. And let us know, because there's some organizations that can help, so we should follow up and see.
Well, I went to your state of the state address, and I followed up through there, and there's nothing.
Let me lean in, okay? All right. And they were so good during the speech, too. Good job, guys. Thank you so much for such great behavior. Thank you. I know it's not easy because we're not always so lucky at home. Okay, Henry?
Good morning. Morning. What a difficult few stories to follow. Thank you, Nikki and Representative Michaels, for sharing your story. My name is Henry Brown, and I'm the CEO of Miller Electric Company, a company that's been based here in Jacksonville for 95 years. I want to thank Governor DeSantis for coming here to Jacksonville today and visiting with us and signing this important legislation. So if you've read his new book, you'll know that the governor spent the summer before he went off to college working as an electrician's apprentice in his hometown near Tampa. So Governor, we hope you go all the way, but if you ever need something to fall back on, we've got a job for you here. Certainly proof that, as we tell our first-year apprentices, that a career as an electrician can go anywhere. And that's certainly true for the men and women here at Miller Electric Company. Our business started off as a local electrical contractor almost a century ago. My grandfather, Buck Autry, started here as an apprentice in 1950 and quickly worked his way up to president of the company in 1966. Through 3 generations of leadership, we've grown into a national company with more than 3,000 employees and approaching $1 billion in annual revenue. And I can tell you that wouldn't be possible, and we wouldn't be in this position today without the governor's determination to keep our state open, to keep our taxes and regulations low, and to invest in our workforce education. And that's made Florida the best place in this country to do business, and we're fortunate to be based here in the Sunshine State. We're proud to be a family-operated, employee-owned business. We take pride in hiring American workers, including legal immigrants, and giving them an opportunity to have a growing career and a good salary on which they can raise a family and live a fulfilling life. We want to know that the people that we are hiring, whether native-born or born abroad, are here legally. We are thankful to have E-Verify, to check the citizenship or immigration status of every person we hire. And we are an early adopter of E-Verify, and we've been doing that on every new employee since 2008. Unfortunately, many of our competitors here in Florida, as we've heard, and around the country, do not use E-Verify and end up hiring illegal immigrants. These competitors fall into 2 categories. The first have no intention of making illegal hires and just assume that the people are here legally. Others know exactly what they're doing and intentionally hire illegal immigrants to drive down their labor cost, to unfairly compete with law-abiding companies like ours, and taking jobs from the people that are here legally. Or even worse, they know it's easier to abuse individuals who are too afraid to complain about working conditions. As I'm sure the governor remembers from his time as an electrician, this can be a dangerous job working in close quarters near high voltage. At Miller Electric, we care about the safety and well-being of each and every one of our employees, and safety is one of our core values. Thank you, Governor DeSantis, for signing this legislation today to make E-Verify mandatory for all businesses in Florida. By doing this, you're making working conditions safer for everyone, and you are leveling the playing field by making sure all of our competitors are hiring Americans and legal immigrants, paying them what they deserve and treating them with respect. Thank you.
Okay, all right, we're going to go sign. You guys want to come up here and we'll do the honors? But it's a souvenir. Okay. Today is the 10th of May. Yes?
Nope.
All right, here we go, guys. You guys are so well behaved. I'm so impressed. You guys look Well, thanks for everybody that's been a part of this. I think that we had some great support in the legislature, and obviously Rep. Michael did a great job, Blaze in the Senate, but many of the others who spoke, I know Representative Jocks was able to be very powerful, and at the end of the day, I think, Henry made the point, in Florida, we want businesses to hire citizens and legal immigrants, but we want them to follow the law and not do illegal immigrants, and that's not that difficult to do. And once we get that kind of as a norm in our society, I think we're going to be a lot better off. So this is another great victory for this most recent legislative session, but stay tuned. We got a lot more coming down the pike in the days ahead. Okay. So I've been pretty busy. I know there's different stuff in the news, but we've been busy on Monday sticking it to the CCP, so they're not buying land in Florida. Yesterday we did the biggest increase in pay for teachers, but we also protected them against mandatory deduction from school unions, more money in their paycheck, and then today doing this great stuff on illegal immigration. So that's kind of been my focus. I may have something to say about the overall landscape for 24, but stay tuned on that. Yes. So the issue with the legal immigration system, and first of all, that's federally controlled. That's not anything that the state, can do either way. But it's easier to come to this country illegally than it is legally. That's why you have people coming across the border from halfway around the world. There actually aren't that many Mexicans, a lot of Central America, some South, but you have people that will fly into Central America or fly into Mexico and then come across the border illegally rather than just coming legally. So, but here's the thing. When you have so much resources that are being sapped because they're processing illegal aliens and they're giving them court dates and all this other stuff, I think that's a big waste. I think if you come illegally, you just get put back across the border. You don't have a trial. Come on, how ridiculous is this? So you just get that done, and then once you do that, then you have more resources to be able to say, okay, in immigration, legal immigration, nobody has a right to immigrate to this country, no foreigner. We determine as Americans what type of immigration system benefits our country. But when you're doing immigration, it's not for their benefit as foreigners, it's for your benefit as Americans. So if there's legal immigration that's harming Americans, we shouldn't do that either. For example, some of these H-1B visas, they would fire American tech workers and hire foreigners at lower wages. I don't agree with that. I think that's wrong. There's other things that are value added, so you got to look at how that is. But once you determine, I think we should have more of a point system like Canada or Australia. I don't think we should have chain migration, diversity lottery, any of that, which is a lot of our immigration here. Then you can do, but you got a long way to go to be able to get there. But it starts with stopping the border influx. I do think that with a border that big, you need a physical wall. You can't just do it with personnel surveilling. There's too many gaps. So you do that wall, construct that wall, then that'll make it more easy for you to follow the pressure points and repel people from back there. And I have offered Biden help if he wants to get serious about this. I mean, you remember we had the hurricane come through southwest Florida. It knocked out a bridge to Pine Island. It created 3 holes in the Sanibel Causeway. A lot of people thought that was going to take 6 months. We were approached from the state to take over that and do it. And so I said, all right, we'll do it. So I got guys together. I said, no red tape, no bureaucracy, no excuses. I want those bridges back up. And Pine Island Bridge, instead of taking 6 months, was repaired in 3 days. And Sanibel was repaired 2 weeks later. And I raise that just because I am willing to send those Florida folks who did that I will send them to the southern border, and we'll get cranking on that wall if Joe wants to get serious about it. So, yes. Well, of course they're going to do that, because you know what they do? They put authorization forms in front of the teachers, and they get pressured to sign blanket authorizations. They don't know how much is being deducted, and then they start deducting from the paycheck. And what we're saying is, that's not appropriate to have automatic deductions. If you want to do it, you can write a check and hand it to them. But what that does, that relieves the pressure off the individual teacher or employee. They can make more of an informed decision. They have a better sense of how much money is actually going, and then they can evaluate what is the union actually doing for them. And they're really not doing very much. They use that money for political partisan activities. That's what they use it for. So why would you want to do that? Look how much some of the union leaders, school union leaders make. They make a lot more than the teachers make, not even close on that. So obviously, they see that if there's more informed choice, that they will probably end up getting less dues into their kitty, and they'll have less of a slush fund to use politically. So I get why they would do it. But I would just remind people, when the going really got tough during COVID, and we had to make decisions in Florida about, are we going to follow the crowd and deny our kids an education? Or are we going to make sure those schools were open so that kids could be in school 5 days a week, and so parents knew that they had the option to send their kid to in-person education? This is like June of 2020, a long time ago. And did the school union in Florida say, you know what, we're with you, we're standing for the kids, we're going to make sure that we're up and running, and we're going to be there for the people that need us? No, they didn't do that. What did they do? They sued me to try to close the schools. They didn't want the kids in school at all. And that was a political decision. That was based on partisan politics. It was not based on the best interests of school children. And you look around the country who didn't have the type of determined outlook on this that we did in Florida. We had kids locked out of in-person education for over a year. And some of the places, usually the poor kids, you'd have people from like the Chicago Teachers Union saying, we cannot have kids in school, too dangerous. And then the union member would be found in the Bahamas partying on Instagram. You'd see these pictures, and you're like, man, how could you live with yourself knowing those kids are toiling without getting access to education? So I think that it was, clearly it's going to be good for teachers, because if this is something that matters to them, they can do it. It's not saying you can't, but it provides, I think, more protection for their paychecks and ultimately more take-home pay. We're raising the pay anyways with a big $1.05 billion teacher categorical, but then on top of that, you get even more. Right. So the question is, so we had to make a rule. So in Florida, if you're on trial for a crime, it has to be a unanimous verdict. That's how it should be. That's how it always is. So say you're on trial for first-degree murder, you're convicted. Then it's a death penalty case. Then the jury would vote on whether to give the death sentence or not. And historically, in Florida, if 8 of the 12 jurors said death, you could get capital. Our old liberal Supreme Court said that that was somehow unconstitutional, and so the legislature changed it to say, okay, you have to do unanimous for the penalty. And the current Supreme Court reversed that. And so we were in a situation where the legislature hadn't changed it back. You had the Parkland situation where this guy massacres these students and teachers. The only appropriate punishment, in my judgment, would be capital. Now, it's fine if you don't agree with capital punishment. A lot of good people don't. But it is the law in Florida, and so my view, the worst of the worst, you have to give that. Part of it's to deter other people. Part of it is just that's the only appropriate punishment, and I think the victims deserve maximum justice. But what happened was they fell a juror or two short on that. And the question is, were these jurors that were really not inclined to give it under any circumstance? And if you have a unanimous, you have one juror that can basically nullify what the rest do. No question about the guilt. Yeah, the unanimous, you got to be unanimous for guilt. So these are guilty people. But then the question is, going forward, if you have 8 of the 12 that agree with that, that really should be enough to move forward, given that some people could get on the jury who really aren't intent on ever doing capital. So we did the law. Part of it, the Parkland families were really supportive of it. Now the question is there may have been, I signed the law a couple weeks ago, there may be cases where the crime had already been committed, the individual had already been charged, but they haven't gone through the trial yet. So now when you go through the trial, is that 8-4 threshold going to apply? And basically it's just a question of law. I think it does, because it's a procedural change, and usually procedural changes are fine. But they'll file motions, it'll be litigated, and then you'll go from there. So my anticipation was, yes, it would likely apply to pending cases, just because procedural rules do. You can't change a substantive rule in the midst. So say you committed conduct which clearly isn't criminal. If the legislature then criminalized it after you committed it, they can't go back and say you committed a crime, because you didn't at the time. And so that's the difference between substance and procedure. So I think it's going to work out, and it'll be fine. I think so. I just started reviewing it yesterday. I think basically it's you're going to treat a roadworthy golf cart like you would treat an automobile, and that's something that probably makes sense when you're on those roads. I know there have been problems with it, so I haven't made a final decision on it, but I would say that I'm favorably inclined. Okay, guys, thanks so much. Appreciate it.